maritime security challenges in the Indo-Pacific region. And with that, we'll go ahead and jump to your questions. We'll start with AP, Lita Baldor.
Thanks, Pat. A couple things on the Fort Sill training. First, is this something that the U.S. sees as recurring? In other words, will this happen over time as more need to be trained on the Patriot system? Is Fort Sill the only place where the U.S. will train for the Patriots? And are there any concerns as you look ahead to putting a Patriot system in Ukraine? Are there concerns about having it connected to U.S. networks? Are there communications issues that you see or the U.S. sees as a concern about this? Thank you.
Thanks, Lita. On your first question, the focus is on this initial class. Certainly, we'll keep dialogue open in terms of any potential future training. But right now, the focus is on training these operators to operate this system. And as I mentioned, that training will focus on operations and maintenance of the Patriot. In terms of any concerns as it applies to U.S. air defense or U.S. systems, no concerns on that front. Thank you. Sir.
Thanks, Pat. So on the training front, is there an update on the combined arms training of the Ukrainian battalions in Europe? Can you confirm whether that's begun or whether it will begin around the same time as this Patriot training in the United States? And just additionally, is it still the plan that it won't require additional U.S. troops or units in Europe to provide that training?
Thanks, Travis. So my understanding is that that training will begin very soon, as early as next week. And then in terms of additional troops, to my knowledge, beyond the standard troop rotations that we're already doing, it will not require a significant or any increase in terms of U.S. trainers going over there. Thank you. Phil.
What are your thoughts about the numbers of Ukrainians that will be coming to Sill to train, and the broader issue of taking Ukrainians off the battlefield, in these months? Is the winter, is the sort of stale, I don't know, the greater appearance of a stalemate allowing for more troops to leave the battlefield, or you're thinking there about how many can be?
Yeah. So a Patriot battery, by definition, takes about 90 folks to operate and maintain that system. So the numbers are commensurate with what one would expect in terms of operating the Patriot battery that will be delivered to Ukraine. In terms of Ukrainian forces coming off the battlefield, since the very beginning, that's something that we have talked closely with the Ukrainians about to ensure that they can do both, right? Because as you point out, there is an ongoing fight. We certainly don't want to do anything that would jeopardize their ability to continue to fight. But ultimately, that's a decision for the Ukrainians to make in terms of how many troops they can afford to have come off the line in order to do the training. You've heard Secretary Austin, though, talk in the past about how important it is to look at this holistically, and that if I give you a piece of equipment, I'm simply giving you a piece of equipment. But if I give you the equipment and I give you the training, I now give you a capability. And so that's really essential here, is to ensuring that not only do the Ukrainians have the equipment they need to fight, but also the training that's going to enable them to operate it on the front line. Thank you. Ma'am. Laura.
Thanks, Pat. Can you talk about how the military is planning on accelerating this training? I understand that Patriot training normally takes up to a year, so what are we planning on cutting out? Are there ways we can make up that time? Can you just elaborate on how that's going to work?
Sure. As you highlight, Patriot training normally does take a bit longer. However, working, and the Army can certainly provide any additional details, but like a lot of things in this conflict, we recognize, to Phil's earlier point, that the longer those troops are off the line, they're not actually engaged in combat. And so trying to work with the Ukrainians to see what we can do to accelerate the training timeline. In terms of what that training will look like, it will consist of training in the classrooms. It will consist of training on the Patriot systems, and then, of course, in a simulation lab as well before they actually deploy the capability on the battlefield.
And then what are the advantages of doing the training at Fort Sill as opposed to doing it in Europe, say?
So the training school for U.S. and allied forces on Patriots is at Fort Sill already. So they'll be falling in on an existing capability in order to, again, expedite the training and get the system back into Ukraine so that they can use it to defend themselves.